2024 has gone by in a blink of an eye. As we prepare for 2025, which is right around the corner, I'm going to talk about my top 3 leadership challenges going into the new year. You're not going to want to miss it. Stick with us. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. I am your host, John Espinosa. to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Hey everyone, John here. Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. Top 3 of 2025 Leadership Challenge episode. We are going to dig into what I believe are going to be the top 3 leadership challenges going into 2025. As we look back at 2024, we saw a lot of changes in technology. AI is here to stay. Remote hybrid teams, virtual workforces. How many companies are out there that no longer have physical office spaces? We saw that coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of companies have stayed with that model. So as new leaders, as new employees are onboarded into organizations, we do that virtually now. How many of us listening right now are in a hybridized or maybe fully remote workplace? There's probably quite a few of us. Unfortunately, what has happened, companies now have gone away from travel. So I'm going to discuss some importance of that. And also, how many changes have we undergone in the past 12 months? So as we prepare for 2025, I'm going to talk about what I feel are the top 3 leadership challenges, and I will share the ways that I think you can get ahead of the game going into 2025. So we're going to do this just like an old style list. We're going to start with my number 3. And I really had to sit down with this. I got like 3 pages of notes as I was journaling this morning, and I first wrote down a top 10 list. And then I said, you know what? That may take a little bit. We may need to break it up in a couple episodes. So I was able to pare it down to what I consider are my top 3 going into 2025. So I would love for you to comment below. Tell me if you agree. Tell me what you feel are your top 3 leadership challenges. Share that below. And I just may make another episode and do maybe a top 10 challenge later on in the month, in this month, specifically as we close out 2024 and we're looking to kickstart 2025. That way, we're all helping each other. That's what the Go Be Great community is all about. So before I get into my top 3, I want to welcome all those new listeners out there. We are gaining new listeners, so that means you all are sharing this. The listeners that are currently episode after episode that are subscribed to the YouTube channel, that are following our social media platforms, you all are doing a fantastic job getting the word out, sharing this with your family and friends, sharing this with others that you may see value in listening and tuning in. So thank you very much. We are growing the Go Be Great community, and there's nothing better that warms my heart than to know that our community is growing, because as we grow, we help others get to where they are going exponentially. So thank you very much. So let's dig into my number 3 leadership challenge going into 2025. What I feel is an important part of, and this is a byproduct of a lot of the things that are going on with AI, with virtual teams, is emerging technology. How many of us out there have a robotic process that was once maybe a job within your organization or on your team that we have now automated, totally, completely automated that process? Emerging technology is my number 3 on the list here. So as leaders, how do we deal with emerging technology? How do we stay ahead of what is on the cusp, the trends, what we can use, what we can't use? The organization that I work for is very limited in a lot of the software because of security. So that means that we're limited when it comes to some of this emerging technology. However, there's vendors and there's contractors that we work with that may have a little more leeway in what they use. So we just can't be so narrow-minded to think what's going on in our organizations. If you work externally at all, financially, maybe you have HR component to your business that you're outsourcing, whatever that looks like, I can promise you that they are using some type of emerging technology. So how do we stay ahead of that game? One, podcasts are perfect opportunities, free of charge. Subscribe to an emerging technology podcast. YouTube is the second largest search engine currently, right now, right behind Google. So put in emerging technologies and boom, you are going to be flooded with podcasts talking about emerging technologies. So that's one way that I would address it. The second way, look for training opportunities. In the field of training, myself, we are constantly looking for opportunities to train our staff, to professionally develop, to get smart on emerging technologies in the training field. AI, robotic voice. We no longer have to sit in a confined sound booth and record web-based training. AI helps us do that now. Voice generation. We go in, we record a script, and simply reproduces that script. So in your field, what's that look like? 3D printing. I was just Cyber Monday deals and came across my feed 3D printer you could get for roughly around $300. And this wasn't a cheapo 3D printer. This was a decent 3D printer, but 3D printing parts for older planes, for older vehicles, anything that doesn't get mass produced anymore. We can make that in a 3D environment. So again, a lot of these merging technologies, as leaders, as people out there that are wanting to stay ahead of the game, get smart on emerging technologies in your area, in your field, in your expertise. The medical field has tons of emerging technologies with robotic surgical procedures that are coming in, with new technology that even when you go into a hospital now, they've completely done away with paper. When I was working in the emergency room, we still had paper charts. That's a thing of the past. And that hasn't been too long ago, 15 years, 16 years, but still, it hasn't been that long ago that we were using paper to chart patient information, and now it's completely online. You can even follow. My mom was hospitalized in another state, and her doctor was able to tap into that system and pull up her medical records. We are exponentially increasing the way that we depend and the way that we use technology. How many of us have a little smartphone, aka cell phone, that has more memory than some laptop computers that you can buy? So again, they're getting smarter. This AI world, customer service. I went to a training conference and they had a whole session around how they're training customer service people to respond to customer complaints. And a lot of it is AI generated. So guess what? What do you think is coming around the corner? They're not going to have call centers anymore. It's all going to be AI generated. So my third out of my top 3, emerging trends. Stay on top of emerging trends in your area. Let's move on to number 2. Number 2, and I alluded to this earlier, remote or hybridized work environments. Just think about out of the pandemic, we were forced into a virtual environment for those that were able to go there. A lot of companies didn't go back to a physical office, got rid of their leased space, got rid of the cubicle farms that I grew up working in. A room just packed full of cubicles and everybody was packed in like sardines, but that was what we knew. That was the office environment. Nowadays, you have a mix of that. There are some of us out there still show up to an office every day. There are some out there show up to an office maybe a day, 2 days a week, and then work remotely or work virtually the rest of the time. And there are some out there that are completely remote. So from a leadership standpoint, you cannot lead those three environments the same way. You have to get savvy in how you're communicating, what tools that you're using. Take advantage of the platforms, the video platforms like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, Slack, all of those out there, Google Meetup, that have that online video, one-way, two-way group kind of conversations. Collaboration tools that are out there with the documents that we use. If you're a Microsoft product, OneDrive, how do you all collaborate? Microsoft Teams, which uses SharePoint. There are a lot of different ways, and even the in-office environment has changed. Some of those emerging technologies, as we talked about earlier, has automated a lot of our processes. So now instead of a folder getting passed around for signatures, we post a document, we put in the signature fields, and as people sign it, it automatically uploads a new version. Even in an in-person office environment, showing up every day, it is different. I can't tell you how many times that I have talked to leaders and they're not even co-located with the group that they're leading. Even if they do come into the office, their group may be on another side of the country or even another side of the world as we get into a global market. How many of us work in a global community? Yeah, time zones. Think about how we schedule meetings now. It's incredible to think where we have come just in 5 years, 6 years with hybridized and remote workforces. People aren't getting the engagement, but I can argue that some remote employees say they're probably more engaged because of all the collaboration tools that they have. They don't get to see each other in person and go out after work, but they can still replicate that with virtual hangouts and virtual coffee talks. I mentioned that my neighbor has a coffee talk every morning and they pair them up with a different person. That's engagement. That's getting to know your fellow people. And he's the only one located here in Oklahoma. Everybody else is spread across the U.S. From production to manufacturing to the C-suite, sales, marketing, budget. I mean, you can go on and on and on. Each one of those offices are in different locations. So again, leading in a hybridized workforce or a fully virtual, or maybe even you're in person but things have changed, is my second of the top three. I'm in training, I'm in leadership training, and we get a mix of leaders that come into our classes. So we talk about it all. We don't just focus on the in-person environment because we can't ignore the fact that even in the in-person environment, there's bits and pieces that you will have to collaborate with that may be virtual, that may be hybridized. So just because your core group is in person, there's other people that are virtualized that you have to interact with. So you have to lead differently. Harvard Business Review, great place to go get information. I mentioned podcasts and YouTube. LinkedIn Learning, great place. You can go articles. You can get a subscription. There are a lot of different places that will post information, best practices. Just put it into ChatGPT, best practices for leading virtual teams, and it will pull up a list of things and then go out and find training on each one of those. A great opportunity for you to get smart in leading hybridized virtual environments. So that's my number 2. All right, are you ready for number 1? My number 1 challenge going into 2025 is navigating change. I talked about it at the beginning. Navigating change from a leadership perspective, leading change, communicating change, supporting change, adopting of change. However you want to spin, change is inevitable. It's not a matter of if, but when things will change. And not everybody's going to be on board. I can promise you that. You're going to have some early adopters that are going to get out in front, that will be advocating for change, but you will also have some late bloomers that are going to drag their feet until the very end when the old system's turned off and the new system is turned on. So as a leader in those organizations, how do you navigate change? How do you communicate it? What if you don't agree with the change? Whoa. That could be difficult. That could be difficult leading a change that you don't necessarily agree with. Or maybe you have a good percentage of the team that doesn't agree with it. They don't see the value in it. So how do you lead through that? One opportunity that you have is, and what I've learned, be honest. Don't try to sugarcoat it. Be honest, because they can see right through it, but also let them know that this change is going to happen. This change is inevitable. So you might not agree with it, but how can we get past that? What do you need in order to support this? Because if you go kicking and screaming, it isn't going to work out well for anybody. So let's figure this out. Another way to navigate and communicate change, I feel, is to over-communicate. Make sure that you're available for questions on a one-on-one basis. Communicate it in a group setting. Talk with your leaders in the organization. I promise you, the senior leaders in the organization, this isn't their first rodeo, and maybe they have a better explanation than what you can provide. In the end, as we lead through change, it's important for us to realize that people are people, and we get ingrained in our habits. And habits, they take on average about 65 to 70 days. So that first 90 days of implementing any change in your organization is going to be the most critical 90 days of your life. So plan that out. Plan it out. What is it going to look like? What do you want to achieve in that 30, 60, and 90 day frame? Or you can even break it down into smaller chunks if you have to. But leading through change requires you as the leader of the organization, you as the leader of the team, to make sure that you have a well thought out plan that you can go execute. Don't just fly by the seat of your pants when you are navigating through change, especially difficult change, because it will eat your lunch. It will eat your lunch. And it's going to cause a lot of worry. It's going to cause a lot of frustration. And in the end, the change is going to happen anyways. So lead through that change. Make sure that, any change in an organization, if it impacts people, you take that into account. Budgetary considerations. So we've experienced quite a bit of attrition this year through retirements, people taking other opportunities, and we have had to say no to things for the first time in a long time. And when you have a team full of high performers, go-tos, that's not natural. So how do you communicate that? How do you lead through that? You make sure that they know, one, it's not their fault. Two, there's only so many hours in a day. And when the day is up, that's it. Preventing burnout, making sure that people aren't overloaded, taking on extra responsibility to make up for that position not being filled. It's tough. Change is almost never easy, but it's inevitable. So in 2025, it's coming. Expect it. Lead through it. Trust your gut. Be honest. And I promise your team's going to appreciate it. So my top 3 from the bottom up: get ahead of emerging technology. Figure out what your particular field, what is out there, what is coming. Go to trade shows, go to conferences, podcasts, research, ChatGPT, remote work and hybridized work. Just because your business may not be hybridized or remote doesn't mean that you interact with other businesses out there that may be fully remote or hybridized component. You got to learn both. As a leader, as the owner of a business, going to college, integrating into the workforce, learn how to work in a virtual or hybridized environment. And then number 1, navigating change. Learn how to communicate change, learn how to lead through change. It is going to be the most important challenge as we go into 2025 that you leaders are going to face. I hope this top 3 has helped. Put down in the comments, what are your top 3 challenges going into 2025? And I may expand this thing. We may do a top 10 episode. I may go live. We'll make it fun. 2025 is right around the corner, and you are going to be ready. I promise. I believe in you. Go be great. Talk to everyone later. Bye-bye. If you like what you're hearing, do us a favor. Click on that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up or leave a comment. That lets us know that what we are putting out benefits you. If you want additional information or resources or learn how to work with me, head on over to thejohnespinosa.com, because when we become better versions of ourselves, it helps us get others to where they're going. Go be great.